Welcome to The Point with Ana Kasparian. I'm your host, Ana Kasparian, and we have a great show ahead for you guys. In fact, we have a variety of topics, including a very serious discussion on the Affordable Care Act and the rollout of Obamacare. Has it been a bumpy road? I think you guys already know the answer to that, but maybe that's not necessarily such a terrible thing. Then we're going to talk about Radiohead's frontman and how he really hates Spotify. But what does that mean for you? And are we going to get rid of online streaming of music anytime soon? And then we are also going to talk about what you can hope to find in your chicken nuggets. That'll be a fun conversation about what you're putting in your body. And of course, we will end the conversation with a discussion about the GOP in California and some of the sexist things they're doing and saying about Hillary Clinton. But before we get to all of that, I want to do our no filter. Now, recently, I realized that there's a little bit of confusion about my role at TYT, so I thought I would clarify in this week's no filter. I was brought on to work on TYT back in 2007, and my original role on the show was to do entertainment reporting. Now, that was probably the last thing that I was qualified to talk about because, to be completely honest with you, at that time, I didn't even know who Robert De Niro was because I didn't give a shit about movies. But we needed someone to talk about entertainment news because guess what? That's what brings in the money to the network. So Cenk brought me on, we would do a few stories, and boom, the videos would go viral. Now, that was my original role, and that soon evolved into something a little different. I started talking about social commentary stories. I started talking about a little bit of politics if I got lucky enough to do it in the second hour. But every once in a while, I talk about some celebrity stories. And here's the reason why I do it. Recently, we did a story about Miley Cyrus's VMA performance, and that video got 4.5 million views. The video that has the most views for our network is Woman Orgasms 300 Times a Day. That has 27 million views. And the reason why is because people love that shit. They love watching it, and they pay us a significant money. YouTube pays us a significant money through ad revenue for doing those stories. The more views you get, the more ads you sell, the more money you make as a company. Now, it's important to do those stories because that's actually what kind of keeps us independent. We don't have a corporate sponsor right now, and in order to do the stories that don't get too many hits, we have to do stories that get a ton of hits. So just to give you a very simple example and a comparison, on the same day we did those Miley Cyrus videos, Cenk did a video called How the US Media is Pushing for War with Syria. That got 71,000 views. So obviously it's not going to make as much money. Look, guys, it's important for us to cover these very important stories, and that's what we're really here for. But at the same time, you have to come up with a business model that works. And if you're not interested in the stories that have to do with celebrities or entertainment, the great thing about YouTube is you don't have to click on it. Now, I have to say that doing those stories isn't really fulfilling for me, which is why I'm now the host of this show, The Point, where we talk about stories like the Fukushima nuclear reactor. We talk about private prisons. We talk about the militarization of the police force. But guess what? You look at the number of views on those clips, they don't do that well. So you have to come up with a model that makes sense. And the great thing is you don't have to watch every video. You get to pick and choose what you like. And I get to do a little bit of both and enjoy my job. So I hope that clears things up for you guys. And I hope you enjoyed today's No Filter. With that said, let's go to our panelists for today. And we have an all-star panel, starting with John Iadarola. He is the host of TYT University and Common Room on the TYT Network, and most recently went slumming on old media with an appearance on HLN TV. How do you explain yourself?
They asked me to appear, and I did. I don't know. I was on for about 15 seconds, so I don't blame you if you missed it.
All right, fair enough. Desi Doyen is the co-host with Brad Friedman of the widely popular and widely syndicated Green News Report on bradblog.com.
Thanks for having me back.
Thank you for coming back. Jimmy Dore is the legendary host of The Jimmy Dore Show here on TYT Network and is also a soon-to-be-published author.
Correct.
Get it.
Correct.
Are you having an easy time coming up with a manuscript?
I finished it, and but now I'm just editing it down. I over-delivered. It's nice.
What's it about?
All right.
It's called Your Country's Just Not That Into You.
Nice.
And it's just probably makes fun of politics and pop culture.
Oh, that sounds really
good.
fun. All right, we're looking forward to that. Now let's go ahead and talk about the rollout of Obamacare. There have been some issues with it, and the next video explains exactly what those issues are.
In Texas and around the country, uninsured Americans flooded the government and state websites trying to sign up for the health care exchanges on the first day of enrollment.
It affected me right away.
Deborah Lezis of New Hampshire has been looking forward to finally getting health insurance, but getting signed up was challenging.
They're telling me the system is down at the moment.
During a Rose Garden appearance, President Barack Obama touted that the Affordable Care Act was open for business despite the government shutdown. But he did acknowledge glitches hampering online enrollment.
The reason is because more than 1 million people visited healthcare.gov before 7 in the morning.
The nationwide rollout comes after months of buildup in which marketplaces have been praised and vilified. It represents the biggest expansion in health care coverage in nearly 50 years.
Now, the funny thing about this is I don't think the glitches are really that big of a deal. I mean, when you really think about it, you have a huge number of Americans who really want health insurance, so they're going to the exchange, they're going to the website, they're trying to get health insurance. That doesn't mean that Obamacare is a failure. But Republicans are upset with the media for not focusing on the glitches enough, which I think is hilarious because you guys are the reason why the media isn't focusing on it. We're now focused on a government shutdown that you are responsible for, and the American people continuously blame you for. So the Republicans are being complete clowns when it comes to this issue, and I think it's hilarious. Now, Desi, I want to open up the conversation with you. Now, what are your thoughts on these technical glitches? Do you think it's enough for people to think that Obamacare is a failure?
Oh, I don't think they're going to think it's a failure. I think most people, most smart people and informed people realize that this is going to be a difficult and big program to roll out, and that there are going to be issues with that. So I don't think it's that surprising. It's kind of funny the way the media portrayed it, as in this is some sort of, hey, is this to show that Obamacare is a failure on the first day? It's just ridiculous, you know. We'll know later on. I mean, it's going to take some time to figure out just how bad these glitches are. Do they fix them in time? Do they not? You know, it's really too early to tell.
Yeah, TYT has been around for a very long time, I think since 2002, I believe, and we've had glitches with our website and with our technology since the beginning. Like they continue, and hopefully we're not considered a failure.
As of today, we can't always record the things we think we're recording.
Right, exactly.
You might not actually be watching this right now because of problems like that.
Exactly.
But yeah, like just like you said, yeah, it's a huge program, so you expect that it's probably going to fail. It's an online program. When GTA 5 Online launched just a couple weeks ago, it didn't work at all. And in a couple weeks, it'll work, and you'll forget about the problems early on. That's just how it goes. It's not like Obamacare is something that you sign on for. You have a 2-week window, and then that's it for the rest of your life. You'll be signing up every year. Like, we're going to get past this. And the fact that the Republicans are actually turning to this as their critique of Obamacare now, I think that it's laughable, it's pathetic, and it's not like they wouldn't be attacking Obamacare in some other area or some other aspect if not for this.
What's incredible to me is Obamacare is essentially a huge compromise with Republicans. You guys know this at this point. I mean, it's modeled after what Romney passed in Massachusetts. I mean, it's a huge handout to private insurers. It's not by any means a liberal or progressive form of healthcare in America. So why is it, Jimmy, that Republicans are so against it and they refuse to negotiate on a government budget because of the Affordable Care Act?
Because it takes away liberty and freedom, and I like Ronald Reagan. So I don't care what you say, and I don't think the government should be running health care. And and I don't even have health insurance, so I don't care. So someone actually said that to me on Facebook about it.
Wow. Clever.
They were upset about, they had posted a video of this woman talking about in 1 minute everything that's wrong with Obamacare, and of course she mentioned the 16,000 IRS agents that isn't happening, and so I linked that video that we all know about from the Young Turks of Ronald Reagan warning us about Medicare and how it's going to bring socialism and the end of freedom. So I linked that. I go, just so you know, that they've been always trying to scare us about things that are good for us. And she said that back. I like Ronald Reagan, and I don't care whatever you say, government shouldn't be running health care, and I don't even have health insurance. And I'm just like, what do you say to those people? Well, if you're a Republican, you say, vote for me.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that they're shutting down the government now because is there a better reason to shut down the government than denying people health care? I don't think so.
It's kind of incredible. And, you know, I think a lot of young people have that mindset as well, because I think one of the downfalls of the Affordable Care Act right now is the fact that young, healthy people are going to have to pay more for their health care. And a lot of young, healthy people don't have health care to begin with, so they're like, why the hell do I even need this? I don't need to go to the doctor. But it's good to know that there is a safety net there, just in case you get into a terrible, God forbid, a terrible car accident or something.
Young people never get in accidents.
Never. never.
Happens.
Exactly.
Are you kidding me? No. So that's, yeah, so it's always been that way. By the way, they say, well, how the government, well, that's how private insurance works. That's how insurance works, that you spread the risk over of what people, healthy and sick people. So to say that, why should we make younger people pay more? That's how insurance works. Okay.
Right.
And so one of the common, like, sort of liberal observances of what's going on and why they're willing to shut down the government over this and why they care so much about Obamacare that I think is accurate but doesn't go far enough is that this program is probably going to succeed, even though it could be much stronger in many areas. We admit that. And the Republicans don't want government to work, so they don't like this because they don't want people to rely on government. That's totally true, but it's not that they don't want government to work. They do want some areas of government to work, and those areas work very well for what they want, which is like the current tax system, limitations on campaign finance regulation, the military, the Justice Department.
Doesn't work.
No,
so that's why they like it.
Well, exactly. I'm saying it works in the way that they want to. Right. And the health insurance system works perfectly fine for very rich Americans.
Yes. Exactly.
And so it doesn't need reform for them. We need to rope them in because, as you said, we need subsidies and things like that. We need the money to be coming from a wide base and everything. And so I think that the liberals are right, that they're scared of this because it represents an area that, just like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, Americans will come to love and rely on. But I think that you can't miss the fact that Republicans have other areas of government that they're perfectly fine with, and even when the government shuts down, those areas continue to work the way they want.
Yeah, and you know, it's incredible because when you look at the Republicans, they have tried every branch of government to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They tried to do it through the legislative system, right? And they failed more than 40 times. They tried to do so through our judiciary. They failed, okay? The Supreme Court basically said, no, not unconstitutional, get the hell out of here. They tried to do so through the executive branch by getting Mitt Romney elected, and that was part of his platform. The American people rejected it. Give it up. They want health care. The system that we had in place did not work. However, that's not to say that the Affordable Care Act doesn't have a few issues. And I would start with the federal mandate and no cap on costs. So do you want to take that on, Jimmy?
Yes, well, that's the problem, right? So if you're going to make someone buy something, you have to provide an alternative to it that again controls costs. So that's why people say you have to have the public option. You can't make people buy from a private person something that that there's no cost control on. So that's completely correct. Yes.
Yeah.
That is the problem with Obamacare. That's one of the problems with Obamacare. We all know though that eventually we're going to get to single payer. Right, because isn't like 100 million people in America already getting their healthcare subsidized by the government, and whether you're a veteran or whether it's Medicaid or whether it's Medicare or something else. So it's just about time I mean, it's a good step in the first direction, don't you think?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. You know, also remember with the rollout of Social Security originally in the 30s and the 40s, it was very, very limited to the number of people who could sign up. You know, there were a lot of folks who were not included in the folks that were allowed to sign up for the initial rollout of Social Security, which has become a very important anti-poverty program for senior citizens in this country. It's the reason why our senior citizens are not eating cat food. That's what they used to have to do. People died of starvation in the 1910s, the 20s, the 30s, and before that, before we had this kind of safety net. So with that rollout only starting among a limited group of people and then including more and more as time went on, I think we can hope, I don't know that we can guarantee it with the kind of tidal wave of opposition from the Republicans that never ends, ever, but I think that we can hope to see some adjustments to it so that it becomes more expansive.
Really fast, so that's the stereotypical example people give of the eating the cat food, which I think is funny because we're going to be talking later about chicken nuggets. I guarantee the cat food more nutritious than the Kellogg chicken nuggets.
Yes,
you know, you said that Social Security, great anti-poverty program, which it is. Also, Medicare, great anti-poverty program, because before Medicare was instituted, 33% of senior citizens lived in poverty. 10 years after Medicare was instituted, that number was down to 11%. So it's the same thing that happens with non-senior citizens. People go bankrupt now when they get an illness, a lot of times even when they have insurance. So so that's why I think these scare tactics and why the public are generally against the Republicans on this, because those scare stories don't work anymore. We've had enough horror stories right here in America. It's touched enough people. Everyone lives in fear of getting sick.
And by the way, in terms of the media coverage, so the Republicans are mad that they didn't focus enough on the glitches. just less than a week before the program was actually rolled out and you could sign up, we had the CBO giving revised estimates of how much it was actually going to cost. And for many people, it's actually about 40% less than their initial estimates. So far cheaper than we thought it was going to be for most people once you factor in the subsidies. How much coverage of that was there?
Right.
But no, the glitches are the big story.
There hasn't been much coverage of that. In fact, I mean, any type of coverage I hear about the cost, it seems to imply that it's going to cost Americans more, but they're specifically talking about people in their 20s. And one thing to keep in mind, I mean, you get to stay a lot longer on your parents' health insurance if you're in your 20s. And if you are, I think, above the age of 25 and you have to get insurance on your own, most people in their late 20s aren't making enough money in order to not qualify for the subsidies that they would get from the government. You'd have to make over $46,000 a year in order to not qualify for those government subsidies. And I can tell you that most 20-somethings don't qualify.
Well, and also when you looked at the comparisons prior to the rollout in the media that I saw, they were comparing bare bones plans where you get almost nothing except maybe catastrophic, you know, $5,000 deductible and a $1 million limit. And if you get in a horrible, horrific accident where you can't work for the rest of your life, you know, that is all it would cover. This, the programs that are being offered now, the policies that are being offered now for young people, yeah, they might cost more, but they're actually comprehensive.
Right.
So they include, you know, other things like prenatal care, you know, other stuff that would just be preventive care that you should be getting.
Do you hear I hear people say this stuff all the time, that, hey, my health insurance just went up $300, thanks Obamacare. It's like, oh yeah, because before Obamacare, remember how insurance was going down every year?
Oh, totally, totally.
Yeah, it's like, oh, now it's going up? This is crazy.
I also think it's hilarious, and it says a lot about the media. When you guys were talking about how, oh, before, you know, the media was talking about the prices and it was going to be expensive, and now they're all they want to talk about are the glitches, and the GOP is mad because the media didn't play along and give them their anti-Obamacare campaign. They didn't cover it for them like they would have normally if the Republicans hadn't stolen their own thunder by shutting down the government.
Fair enough, fair enough. So I kind of want to end with a question about the future. John, what do you think the future of the Affordable Care Act is going to look like? I mean, there was a recent poll asking Americans what they thought about the Affordable Care Act. The majority of Americans said that they were in favor of it. And then in the same poll, they asked, what do you think of Obamacare? Majority of Americans were against it. And it's incredible because they hear Obamacare and they're like, I don't want the president taking care of me. So it's interesting because my prediction would be that as soon as the rollout is complete, the majority of Americans are going to be happy with it, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I think that over time, the opposition to the idea of Obamacare specifically is going to go down. Generally, once the president is no longer in office, people's like hostile reactions to them die down. And so if that's still what we're calling it, I think that they'll have much less of a problem in about 5 years or so. I don't know. Like, I'm worried about the lack of cost controls that he's saying, and it could be that this is like a Band-Aid on a bigger wound that is not being healed, and the costs will continue to rise, in which case maybe in 5 or 10 years we're going to have to come back with another major policy. If not, and if this does actually to some extent stop the constant rise in the insurance premiums that we've seen over 10, 20 years, then it could be that the next step to expanding this is one, possibly offering up a public option. And if not that, then the federal subsidies that are going out, those could be ratcheted up a couple of notches until you get to a point where, yeah, we don't have a public option, but the government could be paying 50%, 80%, and you get effectively towards the same thing. All
right, fair enough. And it is important to keep in mind that the United States spends about 17% of its GDP on healthcare. You compare that to countries like France, where they spend, I believe, about 4 to 6%. And it makes you wonder why it is that we spend so much money on healthcare compared to other countries that do have universal coverage. Anyway, we will revisit this topic sometime in the future. We'll give you guys an update on how the Affordable Care Act is going as soon as the rollout is complete. But in the meantime, we have other stories for you that we will get to right after this break, so stick around. Welcome back to The Point. I'm Ana Kasparian with my lovely panel here, and we are now going to discuss we're now going to...
Lovely, huh?
You guys are lovely. I love having the all-stars here, okay? You guys are the regulars, and you guys came here to regulate. So now we're going to talk about a little bit of entertainment news. It has to do with streaming music online, and Thom Yorke, who is the frontman of Radiohead, is livid about it. In fact, if you watch the next video, you'll know why.
Music streaming services like Pandora and Spotify have tried to bridge the gap between artists who want people to stop downloading their music for free and those who want music to be more easily shared and accessible. Although not all musicians agree. According to musical magazine NME, Radiohead frontman Thom Yorke pulled his latest album with supergroup Atoms for Peace off Spotify, citing low royalties, and then he went on to say that the popular streaming service is, quote, the last dying fart of a dying corpse. He also told Mexico's Sopitas, quote, I feel like as musicians we need to fight the Spotify thing. Once that does finally die, which it will, something else will happen. Well, Spotify CEO Daniel Ek argues that the company's services could be more profitable than downloads.
All right, interesting. I actually want to give you guys his full quote so you guys get a sense of why he's so upset about this. He said, when we did the In Rainbows thing, he's referring to the album that he put out on his own website, and he allowed people to make donations for it. Fans paid whatever they felt appropriate for downloading the record. What was the most exciting was the idea that you could have a direct connection between you as a musician and your audience. You cut all of it out. It's just that and that. He's very eloquent. Like, I love Thom Yorke. Don't get me wrong. I love Radiohead, but I feel like his perspective on this is a little skewed. He says, and then all these fuckers get in the way, like Spotify, suddenly trying to become the gatekeepers to the whole process. So I think that's an interesting point, but to be fair, Spotify does pay royalties, a significant amount. In fact, last year they paid about $500 million to artists, and this year they're expected to spend another $500 million. So it's not like they just steal the music from the musicians and they allow us to listen to it for free. And when I think about my personal habits, and I'm not speaking for everyone that uses Spotify, I actually use Spotify to sample music. And if I really like the artist and I really like the album, I will download it on iTunes because I like having it on my iPod. I listen to it when I'm going on a run. That's just the way I like to consume my music. So I want to get your thoughts on this, John. You're not really much of a music guy. You've been open about that, but you do have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, I do not use Spotify. I'm a little bit familiar with it. I use Grooveshark, which seems pretty similar. I mean, you can listen to any song you want. I've never had to pay anything. I imagine they pay some sorts of royalties.
Oh yeah, of course.
But honestly, I don't put much value on music, and so the business model is not something I've thought about a lot. Thankfully for Thom Yorke and other musicians, I think that I am not exactly indicative of any rising trend. I think people still love music, and they want to find good bands, and they want to pay money for it. And while I love like what he says about how they went directly to their fans, and Louis C.K. is really big for doing that online with his comedy shows, and things like the Humble Bundle for gaming are ways for indie gaming makers to put out their stuff directly and you just contribute whatever you want. Those are all awesome ideas, and when they work, I think they work very well, but that's still a very small segment of the entire industry, and not everybody's Louis C.K. in comedy, and not everybody's Radiohead in music. And while Spotify seems like it has a lot of problems, the idea that any musician can just do what Radiohead does, I think that that's kind of comical, and I don't know that that's actually a solution.
You make a very fair point there. I came across this one musician by the name of Oliver Tank, and he has very somber music that sometimes I like. I'm in the mood for. And I listened to some of his stuff on SoundCloud, and I loved it, so then I bought his music on iTunes. You know, so it's just, he's an unknown artist. No one knows him. He barely has any Twitter followers.
Yeah, he can put it up on his website, and no one will buy it.
No one will buy it.
I don't know anything about him. I'm just saying a person.
Exactly. So it creates a platform where unknown artists might get a little bit of exposure. So I like that. And I think Thom Yorke is really looking at this through a very narrow perspective. Desi?
Well, I can totally understand where he's coming from. You know,
Okay.
He knows that the music industry model has traditionally not paid artists what they're worth. You know, now eventually if they make it to some, you know, super huge status, some superstar status, then they do get paid a little bit more commensurate with what they've actually achieved. But the problem with the music industry is that their greed, I think, got ahead of them, and they ignored the opportunities to get in on the ground floor of making sure that people could get their new music and that they could also pay for it in a way. I think that that's why iTunes was so successful. I think people want to compensate the artists. I don't know of anybody who actually is like, you know, fuck the artists, we shouldn't pay them.
Right.
They should work for free. I don't know of anybody who feels that way. You know, not everybody can afford it. It's really hard to find new music. No, you don't, John.
John like halfway raised his hand, but in a joking way.
Maybe Ariana Huffington. Anyway.
Oh,
go
well,
ahead.
see, yeah, but
Under
there
that
you
bus.
go. There's always a way that somebody will come up with something that is very creative and wonderful and new, and then another way that the suits will come in and try to make some money off of it and sort of take over the delivery system. So, you know, we're in this brave new world of trying to get our music figured out, and the music industry on its, like he says, the last fart of a dying. I love that.
Yeah, that was a really interesting phrase.
Yeah.
So, Jimmy, what do you think about the music industry kind of failing to adapt to a new platform? I mean, we have the internet now where it's so easy to download music for free. So how do you change the model? How do you change the business model so people can still make money while doing what they love?
Well, you know, I don't, like John, I don't use Spotify. What do you use?
Groove Shark?
I use Boogie Whale, and so we all have our own thing. Yeah. No, I use Pandora, which is very similar to Spotify, correct?
Yes.
I've never used Spotify, but so what is even the difference?
So you download Spotify on your computer, similar to an app, basically.
Okay.
And you can search for a very specific song. You can listen to entire albums. The latest album that I bought was from this artist named Costanza, which is a weird name. But
I love them.
I think she's from Brazil. And I heard one song of hers on satellite radio, and I was like, I'm going to check her out on Spotify. So I did. I really, really liked her stuff, so I downloaded her entire album. And you can listen to an entire album on Spotify as well.
So what is his he just doesn't think he's getting big enough royalties from Spotify?
He's saying they shouldn't have to go through this service that's acting as a gatekeeper for all of the musicians. They should be able to just independently put it out there, directly communicate with their fans, instead of going through this service at all.
He's not really making much sense, I don't think. That doesn't make sense to me, because like this is just another, that's like saying, that'd be like
radio.
That would be like Universal Studios saying, why does NBC have to be in between us and people watching our TV shows? It's like, because they're the ones who bring it. There's just another way of bringing it. But that'd be like being angry at the radio.
And again,
wouldn't he be angry at the radio? What the fuck with this cave fuck doing up there?
And again, that's a fair point. And again, for someone like Thom Yorke, who has a huge band that's very well known, it might not be a problem to not have a middleman. But for a lot of people, you need that middleman for the exposure. And by the way, the front page of Spotify oftentimes will advertise a bunch of up-and-coming bands that I've never heard of. So all of a
but
sudden,
are those bands getting paid? The new bands, are they making enough to survive on? And that seems to be what his main concern is about.
I think his main concern is himself, to be honest.
Sorry?
I feel like his main concern is himself.
I disagree in that area. We can disagree with his read on whether Spotify is good for them, but I do think that the point of him putting this out there is less about him worrying about Radiohead. I think he knows that they're doing okay. I think he does care about those. That's why he's putting out the message. He cares about those other musicians.
Some of the revenue models that I was looking at, that some people are making, you know, $20 over an entire year as a new artist, and that's after thousands and thousands of streams of their music. So what is the incentive for them to continue? How can they continue to pay their rent and be able to make the new music that we all love if they can't make a living, if they're only making $20 a year?
Can I just say this, that so I have a couple of CDs that gets played on Pandora and whatever, and Spotify and whatever. I get money for that now, and I didn't use that before that. I didn't. That was it. You sold them or you didn't sell them, and now I get money like residuals from all these places that didn't exist before. I think it's fantastic, and I'm wouldn't be a famous artist like Radiohead. You know, I'm pretty anonymous as it goes, and as far as on that level. So, and I still can make a lot of money off it. So, I think he's wrong here. I really do think he's wrong.
So you can speak from experience.
Yeah, I can speak from experience. It really helps I know young comics, they love it. You know, they can now make money off their stuff because it gets played, and also like XM and stuff like that. I get money from that. So I think it's great. And the more
Can I
exposure,
do something like that?
I'm actually going to talk to him after.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
So it's really helpful.
All right, okay.
So I think he's completely wrong. Maybe he's out of touch. Maybe he's too far removed. Maybe he's been a millionaire for too long.
Out of touch.
I think he's a creep. He's a loser.
Good reference to his song. All right, we got to move on to chicken nuggets. So recently, some researchers from Mississippi tested 2 samples of chicken nuggets from 2 different chains, I should say. And they basically discovered that less than 50% of the chicken nuggets contained muscle tissue, which is basically the actual meat. The rest of the nugget included fat, blood vessels, nerves, cartilage, and pieces of bone. Now the question is this something that you should be surprised about? If you ask me, this is something that I completely expected, and I still eat the chicken nuggets. That doesn't say very nice things about me, but that's all right. Now, let's ask Jimmy what he thinks. Are you surprised by this news?
No, I'm not surprised by the I'm surprised that they didn't find garbage inside. I was like, oh, there's no garbage in there?
No
then
rat
that's
DNA?
okay. Yeah, no, that's all right. They didn't find any rat poisoning. But so, yeah, I mean, if you're already eat that stuff, but the thing is, kids love that stuff, right?
They do.
But you know what? If the kids aren't going to eat chicken nuggets, they're probably going to eat a candy cane. So you're screwed either way with the kids. So yeah, I mean, yeah, McDonald's turns out not healthy.
Right. And by the way, to be clear, I know that there are 2 fast food chains. I don't know if they're McDonald's.
Oh yeah,
that's not. So I don't want to throw McDonald's under the bus preemptively.
It's McDonald's.
It probably is,
No,
but
I don't know.
we're just speculating that it's McDonald's. We're not sure.
And I think those nuggets, they're almost as bad as the sushi at 7-Eleven. The point is, who eats the sushi at 7-Eleven?
People do.
I know.
Yeah.
I only choose the healthy options, like the hot dogs at 7-Eleven.
I eat
there for
supermarket
hours.
sushi though.
I like those hot dogs at 7-Eleven where they just on those rollers. It looks like, are you cooking them or are they just sweating? They look like they're sweating.
Delicious.
So the problem, like I love chicken nuggets. I do not eat chicken nuggets thinking I'm eating good quality chicken. I think most people don't think so. But the problem for me isn't so much that it's filled up with nerves and blood vessels. I can't imagine how that's a significant portion, but apparently it is. It's not that that stuff's in there and kids are eating it. It's that kids no longer think they need to be eating healthy stuff. Like we had that school system in Fairfax County, I think, that last year they got rid of their additive-filled burgers and they have all beef patties. And now this year they're going back because the kids don't like the way all beef patties taste. Like we no longer even try, we no longer even think we should be aiming for eating real whole foods. And I'm the perfect example of that. And so I think that this is just a symptom of the bigger problem where people don't know what food is supposed to be.
Right. Well, look, a huge portion of this is fat because it's battered and it's fried. And we are biologically driven to go for that type of food, right? Because back in the day, we used to be hunter-gatherers. Now we have everything at our disposal, and so we just eat as much of it as we can. That's what we are, you know, conditioned to want. But Desi, you seem like the healthiest one on this panel, so I want to get your thoughts on this. No offense.
You're absolutely right. You know, we are biologically programmed to crave fat, sugar, and salt, which is probably what most of the basic ingredients are of the chicken nuggets. I mean, remember, chickens don't have nuggets, so what did people think they were eating? You know, and also it's a lot of chemicals, I would imagine. There's probably a lot of chemical programming and the flavoring that goes into these chicken nuggets. I think John's got a great point that parents these days have sort of just given up on the idea that they're going to give their kids whole food, that they're actually going to cook, that they're going to have these, you know, these 3 square meals a day, because we just can't do that anymore in this economy. Parents can't do that. So we're sort of stuck between this really harsh economy and the convenience and cheapness of manufactured food.
So John, quick question. Do you think that the majority of Americans will change their eating habits if they know exactly what's in their food?
No. Maybe. Very briefly, for a day, for a week, I don't know. I mean, my diets usually last a little bit longer than that, but that's about it. And so you said that I was indicting the parents, sort of, and that's totally true.
I'm not indicting the parents. I'm saying that they're in a difficult position. So
they are, and I'm not saying, oh, I know better and they don't. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do when I'm a parent. Like, when I've been in my healthy phase, I had a period at the beginning of this year where I was trying to eat very healthy. I was even a vegan for a while. And breakfast would come around and lunch would come around and I'd think, okay, I'm not gonna eat anything processed. What the hell am I supposed to eat? I don't even know what breakfast is supposed to be when it's healthy.
Quinoa and like spinach?
I'm not cooking quinoa for breakfast. Everything is processed. And so I've been to college. I don't know what I'm supposed to be eating. I've read books on this. I still don't know what a lunch is supposed to look like if it's not salad.
Can I just make two quick, and John did make he has a great point, and I know that because I have Pete next to him. The point is, you're telling me that chicken nuggets, I thought they don't come from the chicken's testicles?
see, now that would be a thing. If people found out that what they're actually eating were chicken testicles, I bet you they would stop eating them immediately.
I'm
just guessing.
I remember watching both Andrew Zimmern and Anthony Bourdain eat testicles of sorts on their programs, and I would totally try it. It depends on how it's prepared.
Right, there's a thing about that, but most Americans, I don't think, would say, here, kids, have this for dinner instead.
My dog eats bully sticks, so I don't even want to tell you what those are.
I don't even know what that is.
I don't think I want to know anyway.
That's exactly what you think.
All right, we got to end that there. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the California GOP and exactly why we think they're sexist. Welcome back to The Point with Ana Kasparian. If you guys thought that the GOP learned its lesson during the election in 2012, you are wrong. Just recently, the California GOP had a convention in California, and they were passing out these pins. Take a look at what they said.
So the Republican Party in California is back on the mend. They're gonna rebuild their party. We're gonna rebrand and become. We're gonna provide answers for California. For those who can't see the image of the buttons they were selling at their California GOP convention, the button reads, KFC Hillary Special. 2 fat thighs, 2 small breasts, ... left wing. Whoa. These guys are just so moronic. It's unbelievable. And I say guys because, I mean, they're mostly guys.
Now, if the GOP is trying to appeal to women, this is obviously not the right way to go about it. They obviously had an issue with the female vote in 2012, especially after people like Todd Akin said that, you know, the female body has a way of shutting itself down after getting raped. But one thing that I do want to point out, and I think that this is a really good point made by one of our viewers, is that, you know, oftentimes liberals love to make fun of Chris Christie's weight. So how does this differ? And I want to ask you about that, Desi.
I don't think it's actually that different at all. You know, this whole appearance image politics that people are doing, they slam each other for how they look. You know, I don't personally participate in that because I think it's wrong. You know, it's not my own personal way of doing things. But this, with this specific issue with the GOP, I'm pretty sure that was a vendor and not necessarily the California GOP. Nonetheless, they should have apologized. They should have come out and said, hey, you know, we didn't know about this. We had nothing to do with this, and we're really sorry. But I don't think they have, and I think that would have been really easy, even if they didn't mean it, to have done that. Yeah. So the fact that they haven't, I think, says a lot and shows that they have not evolved at all, not that anybody really expected them to.
So the reason why this story broke was because there was a reporter, a female reporter from the San Francisco Chronicle, who attended this convention, and she tweeted about the buttons, and then after the outrage, the vendor decided to take the buttons down. The California GOP was like, no, let's get rid of that. You know, so they did respond and react quickly after they got a little bit of media backlash. But Jimmy, do you think that the GOP has learned anything from the last election? Do you think that they're ever going to solve their issue with women?
Yes, well, they have learned, especially they're reaching out to Hispanics. Like they have a new button that says Marco Rubio, 2 cantaloupe-sized calves and 1 wetback. So that is that's their chicken box. So they're reaching out. They're reaching out. Yeah. You know, it's amazing that they're still even a political party. They're so... It just goes, and you know, so Mitt Romney lost by 8 million votes. That was about, you know, 9 million too close for my taste. Do you know what I mean? It's just amazing that they still are able to garner that much political support in America when there's such obviously a bankrupt party. They don't have any ideas. They have no solutions. All they have is reactionary hatred.
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, so I love the caveat that you gave that, of course, it's not the California GOP who made this, it's one vendor. But, of course, the vendors are making things that they think will appeal to the people who are going to be at the convention. And they seem to think that throwing in these anti-woman things are going to be popular. You'll see the racist anti-Obama thing. Constantly, that stuff goes out. And while that may not be officially sanctioned by the party, they are appealing to those people because they know that will appeal to those people. And we were talking before the show about this. If you are a woman attending this Republican convention, what are you supposed to think about what your party thinks about you? Like, some of them probably were like, ha, Hillary's got fat thighs, because there's a lot of women-hating women in the GOP. But I think that this will turn off some of them. And they like you said, they can't appeal to Hispanics. They obviously can't historically appeal to African Americans.
They can't appeal to gays either. I don't know if you remember, Reince Priebus says, you know, we can have a respectful conversation and be respectful. They're like, no, we can't. No, we're not respectful. They're gay.
Yeah. But let's bear in mind that while this is funny and it's the beginning of what will be a long anti-Hillary campaign we should expect for the next few years, it is like number 89 on the most offensive anti-women things they've done this year. And at least on the Chris Christie, I'll say this, and maybe this is controversial, I think it's just more socially acceptable to make fun of fat guys than fat women. It just is. Because making fun of a guy's weight does not by itself say you are worthless, you can't do anything, you have no value. But I think that people use that as an attack on women, and that's what they mean.
Yes. Yes.
And so for men, it's not as all-encompassing an insult.
That's
and
a
so
good
we accept it.
insight of the show there, I think. That was very nice, John. That is
Thank
true, yes. Men, their identity isn't wrapped up necessarily in their body image. I mean, more so now than it used to be. But not like women, for certainly, and they're not valued for their body image.
Exactly.
Men are
That's
valued for other things, and then like body image would be down the list, whereas women, it's kind of reversed. So
women can't get away from that. I mean,
Right.
you're
And
damned
you
if
look
you do.
fantastic.
Well, thank you. So do you. Women are damned if they do, damned if they don't. I mean,
That's
if you don't pay attention to your appearance, then you are criticized for that. If you pay too much attention to your appearance, then you're criticized for that. There's no Goldilocks area where, okay, you'll get just the right amount of praise and just no criticism if you're in just the right perfect place and you look absolutely perfect every single time. So there's just no way out for any woman in any situation.
It's the same thing with female sexuality.
Yeah.
You're a prude if you're not having sex. You're a slut if you're having sex. So it's like, well, how do I win? So there are many issues for women.
Well, you're a slut if you're not having sex with me. From the guy's point of view, not me personally, whoever the guy is.
I thought you were referring to yourself. I was like, wow, John, you really wanted to counter that good point you made earlier in the show.
It's
a bad one.
So we're probably going to see years and years worth, which I hate. We're going to have to see years and years worth of just how bad this kind of misogyny in political discourse can get. I mean, it's like I was telling you guys earlier, it's not even that original. Last July in Australia with the new Prime Minister campaign, the old Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, was actually presented with this very same conundrum because there was a fundraiser where they said that she, it was I think it was Julia Gillard quail or some dish where it was, small breasts, huge thighs, and a big red box. And it's pretty horrific when you think, as the Prime Minister of the country, she had to deal with that.
But she is on the rag a lot, so I mean that does.
Oh my God! All right, we're gonna end on that note. I want to thank our panelists for joining us for this great discussion today. John Iadarola, where can the audience watch your awesome show that is targeted toward college students?
If you'd like to see that show, you can go to youtube.com/TYT-University.
Desi Doyen?
At Green News Report. Where am I? I'm over here. At Green News Report.
Awesome. And Jimmy Dore.
And the Jimmy Dore Show, which is on the Young Turks YouTube network, but it's going to be coming to Showtime pretty soon. So look for that.
Really? Shit.
I made that up, but it would be nice.
He always gets us.
All right, I'm Ana Kasparian. You guys can check me out on youtube.com/TYT or theyoungturks.com Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And please, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the show. You know you love it. And leave your comments because we like hearing your feedback. Have an awesome week, and we'll see you soon.